Athlete, paratrooper, agricultural educator, rancher, civic leader, Mr. 4-H. FrankGraham was all of these things. There's a famous poem about the importance of the dash, that mark between our birth date and the date of our passing on our tombstone. Frank sure seemed to know how to get a lot squeezed in and how to live over the length of his dash. Frank got his start on April 29, 1920 in Fairgrove, Missouri. His parents, Wilma and George, raised Frank and his brother George on a small farm. Not surprisingly, Frank joined his local 4-H club at age 10. It was that local 4-H leader, Ralph Ricketts, who encouraged him a few years later to apply to the University of Missouri. In the interim, Frank is becoming a pretty good baseball pitcher.
On the baseball field, he had few peers. He pitched for the little country community of Charity, and he was the least charitable of all the people in that community when he went on the mound.
But his dad and his mentor, Ralph, both cautioned him to remember that eventually arms fail and he'd better get a college education. And so Frank entered the University of Missouri in Columbia in the fall of 1938. His time at MU was well spent. He majored in agriculture and got his degree in 1942, but not before becoming one of MU's best baseball pitchers. He helped guide his team to not one, but two Big Six baseball championships in 1941 and 1942. Frank took his college degree and stationed himself at the University Extension Office in Wright County. And then in 1944, he decided to join the Army. Frank was stationed in Fort Benning, Arkansas, and first became a paratrooper, and then a paratrooper instructor. He returned to Missouri in 1945 and promptly became the extension agent in Johnson County. But baseball still tugged at the talented right-hander with the nasty fastball and the three-quarter curve. And so he joined an area semi-pro team. Visiting teams that went down to defeat against Frank's pitching included none other than the famed Kansas City Monarchs. A few years after returning from the war, he was one of 8 founding members to create the Missouri State 4-H Foundation. And 11 years later, he was named Director of 4-H Youth Development for Missouri in 1958, a position he would hold until his retirement in 1975. Frank would spend 50 years on the Missouri Board of 4-H Foundation Trustees. Through his dedication and skillful mentoring, he would influence tens of thousands of young people in all 115 Missouri counties.
Most 4-H programs were virtually segregated, including in Missouri. But over his years of service and leadership, working closely with Lincoln University and with other leaders around the country, Missouri and other states moved into the era of openness and inclusion for all young people.
Frank's first love, Emma Jean, passed away in 1985. They had been married over 40 years and produced Judy and Jerry. After a little while, Frank met another lifelong 4-H'er, one from Illinois named Olive Briggs, and Frank and Olive married in 1986, and the family grew even bigger. Retirement was not a quiet affair for a person like Frank. He would run for office in 1986 and was elected to a 4-year term as Boone County's presiding commissioner. In later years, he would also become president of the Boone County Historical Society, serve on the alumni board of the University of Missouri's Agricultural College, serve the Cattlemen's Association, and serve his beloved Midway Locust Grove Methodist Church in several roles. And for more than 40 years, Frank operated a farm and quarter horse ranch, Melody Acres. No, Frank wasn't one to sit around rocking grandchildren, though he had every chance between his 2 children, 2 stepchildren, and 44 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In Frank's later years, he got to enjoy a reunion of the 4 remaining members of the 1942 championship baseball team. He enjoyed donating land to the university's extension service for a new building, experience an honor flight to Washington, D.C., and participate in his own enshrinement into the National 4-H Hall of Fame.
What people don't know is that he was also a national leader for the 4-H program. He was one of the leaders that helped to build the National 4-H Youth Conference Center in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Let there be no doubt about it. Frank's dash of 93 years was filled with service to his faith, his country, his family, his university, and young people across the state and his community, done all the while with warmth, gentleness, modesty, and a smile.
It doesn't surprise me that FrankGraham would be going into the Boone County Hall of Fame. He was always a leader, whether it was in the 4-H program or as a county commissioner, and interested in bettering this community.
He was one of those people that never met a stranger. He was the perfect leader for 4-H and extension work.
If ever a person deserves to be there, it's Frank Graham.
Please welcome into the Boone County Hall of Fame, Mr. Frank Graham.